The movie The Wolf of Wall Street depicted the life of Nadine Macaluso, who since became a doctor specialized in healing women after traumatic situations. Dr. Nadine, thank you for coaching millions of women like me on how to heal and have a happy life after abuse.
Yes, it's a wonderful job that I have to help women heal. I feel very blessed to do that.
Yes. After your training, do you believe we gain the power to control our own mind again and harness our brain power with positive thinking again and to engage in the practice after your training?
Yes.
Sort of visualize ourselves being happy and being able to keep ourselves happy, controlling our own mind again versus having our abusers' voices in our head telling us, "Oh, you're worthless, you're useless, you're ugly," that that the woman is the problem instead of the abuser.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's really what my work is about, right? Because when you're in a trauma bond, which is a toxic, dysfunctional relationship where one of the partners wants power and control over their partner, what happens is that they literally do want mind control.
Mm,
Right. So because at the end of the day, toxic dysfunctional relationships like trauma bonds are all about this partner wanting to have control over you. So what's the best way to do it is to control your mind. However, through my work and through all my research, even if you feel trapped in one right now, I know that for a fact you can unwind yourself from this relationship. You can gain control of your mind again. You can have autonomy, you can have agency, and you can actually be better than you were before the relationship.
that's wonderful to hear, and will give hope to millions of women out there who need that
Yeah,
message. And I guess men as well, any victim.
right.
Uh,
That's right.
um, whether it's abuse from your husband or my former lawyer or work relationship, it still counts as abuse, no matter what form it takes, is
Correct.
how you characterize it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we used to think of abuse as like a physical incident, a physical single incident model. We know that that's not the case anymore. We know that at the root of abuse is coercive control. And so those are the invisible chains of someone undermining you, disparaging, criticizing you, isolating you, threatening you, dominating you. And it can be very hard for other people to see, right? Because it involves also manipulation and gaslighting,
Yes.
right? So, but we know that, yes, can it escalate up to physical abuse? Of course. But as you say, that can happen in the workplace. It can happen with an attorney that you hire. And what it is they have an abuse of power and they're abusing their power and harming the victim.
Yes. Thank you for that. Um, my next question pertains to the movie The Wolf of Wall Street. I start crying and shaking every time I see that scene where the Leonardo DiCaprio character playing the Wolf of Wall Street is physically abusive and pushes you and throws you so that you sort of fall backwards onto the floor. And the Margot Robbie character is screaming or crying and obviously in trauma and in the middle of a physical assault. Um, I'm not sure if that's exactly how it happened in real life, but I would love to hear your reaction because I know I literally start crying and shaking when I see that
Oh,
scene. Do
you're
you
so
react like that as well when you watch it? Or are
no,
you more healed?
not anymore. No, I've done so much therapy. So what happens, and it's important, this distinction is that in the movie, they show me saying to Jordan, I'm going to take the kids. You're never going to see your kids again. And that's when he gets physically violent with her. Okay. And I think they do that almost to give him an excuse,
This
like the patriarchy's giving him an excuse to do that. But here's the thing, that's not how it happened. First of all, I never told Jordan I was taking his kids from him. Not that type of person. Listen, if he wouldn't have been safe and he wouldn't have got sober, that's a different story, right? But what happened was that Jordan, as the movie depicts, was a severe, severe drug addict. And finally, one day, I had had it with his drug addiction, and his coke addiction had gotten to the point that he was going to kill himself. And so I said to him, I am leaving you unless you go to rehab, because I'm not going to sit here and watch you kill yourself and watch all these psychophants kiss your ass. Nobody cares about you. And I said, but I refuse to sit here and watch you do this anymore. So I'm going to leave you if you don't go to rehab. So two very different contexts, right? I'm not threatening him to take his kids. I'm saying threatening him in a way that, but I'm saying, I'm not going to watch you kill yourself anymore because I care about you. And that's when he went crazy, took all my clothing and jewelry, threw them in the fireplace, lit them on fire. And then I was so afraid, but I knew I had to do it. And I went into my closet and I said, God, please give me the strength to do this. And I actually left that night and went to my mother's house. My kids were there, but I knew they were safe. I had 2 housekeepers and nannies there. Then I came back the next day and he was high on cocaine in the living room, running meetings like nothing had happened.
Right.
And he came down to me with my daughter in my arms and told me that he was chartered a private plane and he was going to take her to Florida. And you don't say that to a young mother, especially not a young mother from Brooklyn. And so luckily my mother was a very bright woman, God bless her soul, God rest her soul. And she said to me, before you go home, tell the police you're going home to a domestic violence situation. And so I had called the police before I went home. And what happened is he was carrying my daughter and taking her, and he was going up the stairs, and I was chasing after him to get him and get her. And he kicked me down the stairs.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. And then he ran. Luckily, I dialed 911, hung up, and that's when I chased them into the garage. And one of my housekeepers, because the other housekeeper and security guard did not help me, if you could imagine. Looked out individual running with a 2.5-year-old, but one of my housekeepers did, and I looked at her and I said, "Close the garage."
Right.
And he closed the garage, and he did drive us. I was half in the car, half out the car, and he did drive us into the garage a little bit, like the movie depicts with her. But luckily, by then the police came and they arrested him. Yeah.
What do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of even calling the police when a woman is being assaulted or abused by her husband or the father of her children or her boss? Because I've heard the horror stories that the police end up making it worse because then the man wants to punish you for calling the police on him.
Yes, and that's why a lot of, and we know that now. When this happened to me, it was right when the law changed. And because they said to me, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Book his ass." And they said, "Well, we were going to do that anyway because we know that victims don't stand up to their perpetrators," right? So that was right when the law really changed in New York. I do think it's a good idea to call the police because, I know there's a lot of things. Well, then sometimes the perpetrator turns it on the victim and she gets arrested. There are these scenarios that can happen. But, if you are being abused, it's incredibly important to document your abuse, literally have a file on it. But when it does get physical, you have to call the police. You have to call the police. And when the police come, you must stay very calm. And luckily for me, everybody knew Jordan was a maniac, so they weren't surprised because he had already crashed his car, like in that one scene. So he had a reputation.
Thank God for you. And you had witnesses.
And I had witnesses, yeah. But again, my help, like we say, people follow power and money. Those two, that one security guard and that one housekeeper did not help me. The other one did, and I'm forever grateful to her, but they didn't. And we know that that's part of the situation.
Right. Did you
but that
security cameras in the house that also captured anything going down, any abuse of being pushed down the stairs or the garage? Maybe the garage wasn't on video surveillance.
Garage might have been, but we were inside the garage when he drove us in, probably the outside of the house. But at that point, we did not have any. We had cameras in my daughter's room and somewhere else, but not in the main area. But we definitely had cameras around the perimeter of the property.
Right. Well,
security.
the cameras don't always. Sorry.
He was paranoid, Jordan. He wanted camera, he wanted cameras.
Right. And the cameras don't always cover the exact corner in which an
Yeah,
incident occurs. So the cameras
right.
can help, or the cameras can completely miss where things
That's correct.
take place.
That's correct. Yeah. And the thing about abuse, right? We don't usually believe the victims, unfortunately. We know that there's a stigma against victims. Um,
Unfortunately.
Fortunately, but I was lucky because he was such a good
And he was well known amongst all the
right.
witnesses, even people who just saw him cheating on you or doing drugs. And those people
Correct,
would know
correct.
that he's capable of maybe not being the nicest version of himself if he's under
Right.
the influence of alcohol or drugs, as he
Exactly.
admits that he was,
Exactly.
from going to rehab and everything. Do you think it's possible for an abuser to change, or should a woman in that situation just get away, run away as fast as she can?
Yeah. Listen, I'm in the business of change, right? That's what therapists do. However, with that being said, I mean, the research shows and experience has shown me most of these people do not change. 90% of them do not change.
Mm.
You have to remember a lot of them have the root of their personality is a cluster B personality disorder, which means that they have very dramatic and erratic personality. And we know that personality disorders are pervasive throughout the lifetime. So listen, if somebody really wants to change, could they change? Yes, it would take a lot of effort. Um, but what the research shows and what I've witnessed is that these people don't change, and it's best to run like hell.
Right. The times that I've tried to stay and help someone who had an addiction, I felt like I then, instead of just purely helping them, I was then getting bullied and pulled deeper and deeper into their web of abuse. Before I
That's right.
fix them, they would damage me more. So the healing and the therapy, and again, like you said, if someone wants, if a man is abusive and he wants to go to you or another therapist to heal him, first he has to want
Is to want
to
to.
improve, and then he has to be capable of improving and do the
Yeah,
work and the homework and
that's
really
right.
put that so I don't know if it's even self-discipline, if it's a genetic predisposition. Some of it is just so complicated that it takes
No,
years to unravel a patient.
yeah, we know it's biopsychosocial, so we know that there is a genetic um, part of it. And then we know that it does include family of origin and it does include culture because we live in a patriarchy. So, but my good friend, Dr. Peter Salerno, has done a lot of research, which some people don't like. He gets some slack on Instagram, but I tell you that whenever you're at a cutting edge, precipice, right, people clap back. But his research really demonstrates that a lot of it is genetic.
Mm.
And that doesn't mean if you have a narcissistic ex, your kids are going to have it. My kids don't have personality disorders, okay?
It
So I
can
want to
skip,
scare anybody.
it could skip
Yes,
a generation, or a particular
generation.
child could be lucky and not get the addiction gene. Why is it so hard for an abuser to admit that he needs help?
That's a great question. Well, I mean, you have to remember it. Abusers are getting all their needs met for money, power, pleasure, and status, right? Money, power, pleasure, and status. Why would they want to change? I
Right.
mean, why would they want to change now?
Well, if
Um,
they see that their wife or their law client or someone is suffering because of their
but
behavior,
um,
sometimes, right, an intervention can make them see their behavior is
sometimes,
affecting others.
but you have to remember they don't have remorse, empathy, or compassion. So they don't really care that they're affecting you. Now they can feign cognitive empathy, but they don't have empathy the way you and I do. Because if you think about love, like what I just think about my children, when they hurt, I hurt
Yes.
because I love them. But the pathological perpetrator does not feel that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did the real Wolf of Wall Street ever call you names or try to shift the blame onto you like it was your fault
Oh, yeah. He would always, he would
this
always
way?
names Gold Digger. I can't even say them because they're so crazy. Fuckcunt, like all the time when he would get mad at me. And it was all often about me trying to stop him to do drugs. He would just go absolutely crazy on me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And no one deserves to be called those words, especially the wife
No,
of someone
no, and
other.
I don't think, a lot of one of the number one traits of a pathological predatory person is that they do blame everybody else for their problems. I don't remember him blaming me that much. We just had enough to fight with me trying to stop him do drugs. That
Right.
was not so much part of my dynamic with him.
In the movie, there's that scene where you're in the bedroom and he's saying to you, that you didn't work, you didn't have as great a career as him, therefore it's your fault.
Oh, yeah, they say that in the movie. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't remember.
complaining that you didn't have a steady career. Meanwhile, you're a stay-at-home mom at the time, which is a full-time
Yeah,
job.
which is a full-time job. Yeah, and Jordan never threw that in my face. That wasn't a thing that he really cared about. He liked it that I did work, and I actually did work at the end of our marriage. I owned a maternity company. I made clothing. I had a store. I had an internet site, a website. So I did work,
And you've gone
and
to
he made
medical school and become a doctor, so you've proven
yeah,
times
well,
10.
and then he makes fun of me in the book because I always went to school. I went to school to learn about wine. I went to cooking school. I went to interior design school because I was buying expensive things. I wanted to understand it, and he makes fun of me, in the movie, which he can. I don't care. I like that I'm an avid learner.
And I'm sure there were some script writers who just, ad lib and not every
Yeah,
dialogue occurred.
right, of course, of course, of course.
Were
Yes.
there any other scenes that stood out that weren't accurately depicted where you felt like, oh, I'd like to correct that for the record?
Yeah, I think the one that we mentioned is the most important one that I can think of. Oh, I mean, the nursery scene never happened. I mean,
Right,
it's
with the
ridiculous.
legs opening.
That's like every man's fantasy. And I wish I was that sexy. Definitely not.
Well, it made a good scene for the movie.
And it was fine.
Entertaining. Yes.
Yeah,
Oh
that's a
gosh. Um, what do you think of this pattern that I notice in a lot of news articles and criminal cases where a man has abused a woman, even Jeffrey Epstein, the women were all reporting that they were threatened. If you tell anyone that I was violent to you, or if you tell anyone I've done drugs in front of you, or I've introduced you to Prince Andrew, and if,
yeah,
if you tell anyone you gave me a massage and you're underage, if you tell anyone, whatever the truth is, in my case, it was a slightly different truth than yours
yeah,
or than theirs, but it all follows that pattern where then the abuser says, don't tell anyone, don't try to divorce me,
yeah,
don't try to quit your job if you're working for me. If
yeah, yeah.
tell
Well,
anyone, what is that where they threaten the woman, you better stay silent or else I will ruin you, I will destroy you, I'll tell everyone you're a liar. What,
yeah, yeah. Well, what that is that's coercive control, right? So anytime somebody's dominating, threatening, or intimidating you, they're coercing you, meaning they're pressuring you. And so they do that because they want to instill fear into us. And it works.
does work.
Because in a trauma bond, there's also a power imbalance. And so, as you can see in all of these instances that you named, right, these men have the power. And so they abuse and exploit that power, and they threaten, intimidate, and dominate these young women and instill fear into them. And the women think, you know what? They're really powerful. They could make shit happen. I better stay quiet.
Right?
And and we don't believe victims. We've stigmatized victims. And so it works because it's not just them threatening them, it's the cultural structure of patriarchy that supports the threats.
And in the movie, at least in the book, even the females who worked for him and the
Oh,
males who worked for him were intimidated by him being the
oh, for
CEO,
sure.
founder, and chairman of Stratmont Oakmark capital,
Yes,
a
yes,
financial firm. They were so intimidated by the leader of their firm. They're down here, he's up there. When the
yes.
FBI questioned them in the movie, all these people covered up for their fearless leader. And then in the movie, it showed that it didn't work both ways, that loyalty. They were covering up any unethical acts he did to protect him. And then it seemed like from the movie that he sort of flipped on the people under him to get a lesser sentence. And, that
I think he flipped on the people over him. Like, I think
over
he,
him.
yeah, I think he flipped on like all the people, the bigger people out and
Oh,
stuff.
the co-executives,
Yeah, like, and at different companies.
partner.
Yeah, I don't know exactly who because I wasn't privy to that. But yeah, they did. I think the whole house of cards fell down pretty quick. I think once people hear they're gonna go to jail, they're like, okay, I'll tell.
Yeah, I just thought that scene was so compelling where all these people are being interrogated by the government.
Yeah, and they're
And I
stonewall.
don't recall, I don't recall, I don't recall. I didn't
Stonewall
recall anything. And
government.
they said no one remembers anything about the Steve Madden IPO. And they all
Oh,
denied
you
it
have
to
yeah,
protect
you
the
have to
leader.
yeah, but this the way Stratton Oakmont worked and the way a lot of these companies work, they're like cults. Stratton Oakmont was like a cult, really, right? He was the leader, he made all the rules, they all worshipped him.
Right? He was the
And
hero and the one
yeah,
paying their salary. So literally, they were biting the hand that feeds them to go from here and take a bite. You don't punch
right, you don't
up
do
like
that. No,
that.
no.
You try to
So
protect and respect and revere the hero,
that's that's right. Yeah. So
paying
that
your salary, your health care, supporting your family. You're grateful to that man. I was grateful to my boss and lawyer and afraid of him because I depended on
correct. That's right. And that's a key word, right? In these toxic, dysfunctional trauma bonds, it's not just that the person has more resources, it's that we depend on those resources.
right.
Dependency is a huge piece of this toxic, dysfunctional relationship.
For example, once you had children with your husband, you
That's
were
right.
more tied to him, more dependent on him, and also you needed to protect him because you don't want the father of your children
Correct.
in jail or losing his money because that hurts your children
Correct.
too. So then you become so conflicted. Do I turn in this man who I want to be a good father and good role model? Do I want him to have a record? That they say sometimes a wife even wants to turn in her husband for crimes, but doesn't because she's thinking of her children and how they'll feel if their role model is disgraced.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that wasn't my story because the FBI was onto him, so I didn't need to do any of that.
And also,
Right.
you didn't work with him. You weren't in the office.
I wasn't in the business. And, I think that also at the end of the day, we really only have our moral compass and values. And so, if somebody is doing something wrong and illegal, then they need to have consequences for it, no matter who they are. But I understand when it's the father, it can get much trickier.
It's hard. And when it's someone who's just going to be pardoned anyway by the President of the United States, it almost doesn't matter if you report crimes or not, if they're just going to
That's
receive
right.
pardon and get away with it all. Um, People always ask me why I didn't leave the second I was physically abused, like immediately run out the door. What are your thoughts about why women don't leave sooner?
Well, women don't leave for a lot of complex psychological reasons. So, as I mentioned, for a trauma bond to exist, there has to be two conditions. The first one is a power imbalance, which we've already discussed. But the second one is intermittent reinforcement. Abusers are not abusive all the time. What happens is that when they first meet you, I call them Romeo. They're nice, they're charming, they're generous, they're kind, helpful. But then over time, the mask falls and they become Dirty John and they're betraying, lying, gaslighting, abusing, controlling. And so it's the extreme, it's the mixture of these extreme kindness and cruelty, which is that intermittent reinforcement behavior that actually creates the bond. So every single time they're abusive, then they come around and they apologize And you're like, oh no, they're nice again. So hope is the hook. And also, what happens is that due to the two masks, the Dirty John and the Romeo, the victim gets a symptom called cognitive dissonance. And the victim is totally confused. Are they Romeo, Dirty John?
Mm.
Are they Romeo or Dirty John? And she can never really land on an answer. So, because of intermittent reinforcement, because of cognitive dissonance, because of fear, because of dependency, because of children, because of job security, right? Because nobody's going to believe her. There's a lot of reason why she stays.
That was so hard. People also ask me why I didn't leave when I was first verbally abused. Do you feel that women stay longer if the abuse is verbal versus
Yes,
physical? And is
yes,
that because bruises sometimes inspire others to intervene? Because if
yes,
we have
yes,
a bruise, they sort of want to come in and help us and sort of force us to realize what's going on.
yes,
We're in denial.
yes.
You know, I was.
Yes, yes. And I think emotional and verbal abuse, again, are invisible. They're invisible to other people. So we almost gaslight ourselves. Say, oh, it wasn't that bad. They really didn't mean it. They had a bad childhood. You
Right.
know, they'll do better next time. And especially if we're a kind, loving, empathetic, tolerant woman who sees the best in people, who wants to trust people. We project positive elements onto these toxic people that don't exist.
You speak the truth.
Yes.
Did you ever have to cover up bruises with clothing or makeup?
No,
Okay.
no,
It wasn't too often that he was
no,
physical. That's
no,
good.
no. Yeah, he wasn't physical. He would more throw things, punch walls, but
Well, that's physical. And throwing
yeah,
me down a staircase, Nadine,
that
that's
was yeah,
physical.
that was the one physical incident, right?
Yeah.
But like I know now,
It's
anytime
unforgivable. Any act of violence I've learned, is not forgivable.
right, but anytime a perpetrator punches a pillow, punches a wall, that's what they want to do to you. So you could look at that just as bad as physical as them hitting you.
Right. And how do you define or give an example of grooming?
Yeah, so grooming is an experience where the perpetrator intentionally is being kind to you, is giving you attention, is seeming interested in your interests, is making you feel special initially. So knowing that they are going to violate you later on, right? So grooming is a process of allowing the victim to lower their defenses and start to trust.
It's funny because I didn't know what grooming was when it was happening. And when I look back and the things that were said about how because he was my lawyer in a domestic violence case,
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to say if I got assaulted or beaten or raped again, because then I would have two abuse cases. So I was told that I was to be quiet for my own good because I would look bad in my first abuse case if I suddenly said there was a second person abusing me who was the lawyer in the first abuse case.
Yeah, I mean, that is such, I mean, when you think about all the gaslighting that's happening there, all the manipulation that's happening there, I'm so sorry that you endured that. That's absolutely insane. Because, but think about this, perpetrators usually abuse people that are very vulnerable, right? So when you're in a very, very vulnerable state, unfortunately, and this doesn't make it right, we are easier to be taken advantage of.
Easier when we're vulnerable, when we're either young or coming out of an abusive relationship.
Right, naive, sick, parent died, you moved,
Right. You need the
right?
money, so you work for a boss who then turns out to be corrupt, but you can't leave the job.
Correct.
You
Because
need
you need
that
the
money,
money, right?
you need
So,
that lawyer.
so vulnerability in the hands of a pathological predatory person can be very dangerous for the victim.
Right. And just like it seemed, I don't know you personally, but it seemed in the movie that, your husband only started cheating on you once he had you wrapped around his finger, meaning you had a ring on your finger, you're his
Yeah,
bride and the mother of his children. So now he can cheat on you because what are you going
yeah.
to do about it? You're already pregnant or you already have
Right.
children.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, that whole cheating thing that they really exposed in the movie, Jordan and I never had one fight about cheating.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's different from the
Yeah,
script.
it's so ridiculous. I couldn't shake the guy. That doesn't mean I'm sure he didn't do those things that were depicted in the movie, but he hid that from me very well.
Oh,
Because
wow.
we never had one fight about another woman. So I never threw water in his
Hey,
face.
the water scene with the throwing
Fight
water.
about
I love that
getting
scene.
no.
It
First
was
of all,
very dramatic, though. It made good Hollywood script.
yeah, I'm
It's
not
funny that
honestly
it wasn't
not
true.
even, yeah, I'm not even a jealous person. Not that I would have liked that, but yeah, no, that was, I think, his fantasy, right?
Also, men do work late in New York City, especially, and men go on business dinners and stay out
Yeah,
and
and
go to
I really
guys.
never,
You
I
don't
really,
always know if it's drinks with the guys. You wouldn't know if it was a date with a woman.
yeah, I really was never worried about that because he was always home stoned.
Right. And because you're absolutely beautiful, I meant to say that earlier. You're such a beautiful and intelligent woman that he would be lucky. He would have to know that he was lucky to have you. And,
I don't think these people ever appreciate us.
oh, really? Oh,
No,
that's awful. Maybe you're right, because it's that sociopath, narcissistic
I don't think they ever appreciate.
personality where they don't appreciate the woman, really. They just pretend to appreciate you when they're being the
Oh
nice
yeah,
guy.
yeah,
Yeah. I guess I've been very naive all my life. So when I learned things from you, from your seminar and your book, and when I learned things about grooming just from talking to lawyers and seeing the pattern that the
yeah,
Jeffrey Epstein victims went through was the same exact modus operandus. It's the Harvey Weinstein playbook as well. Tell the victim she's going to be known as a liar. She'll never work again. She'll never get another husband or boyfriend. Um,
right.
and
That's
it's
right.
really scary. At the time, all I wanted was a good husband, a good reputation as a good woman who's honest and hardworking at work, and honest in my lawsuit and credible. And I figured no one's ever going to marry me if people think I'm a liar who goes out there and accusing people
Right,
to be bad.
right.
So I thought if they're bad, I have to cover it up for my own sake. Never mind for their sake and their public reputation. Um, I, I find that a powerful man's public behavior versus his private behavior is such an interesting dynamic where he could be beloved in the community, like the coach of the university football team or little league coach for your kids' soccer game, and the community loves him or the world loves him if he's famous. And then there's a different man who's at home or
Yep,
behind the scenes
yep,
when the doors are closed, whether it's in the office or
yeah. Well, yeah, because pathological narcissists are very into image management,
image
right? They're very
management.
they're very into how they are seen by others. And so they're really manipulating their image management when they are in public. But then once they get home and nobody's watching, they don't care.
Or they had
Like,
a bad day and they take it out on the
yep,
people they can take it out on, their assistant, their staff,
exactly.
their director of business development,
That's
their
right.
wife,
Yeah,
sometimes even their children, right?
correct. Correct. Yeah.
And you probably knew, I mean, you were smart enough to know that if you called the police, you were not only protecting yourself, you were protecting your children, calling the police to make sure they didn't get hurt or kidnapped.
Yeah, well, because he was trying to steal my, I mean, not steal, but take my daughter, right? And so, I mean, that was just never going to happen.
Not okay.
I mean, he would have had to kill me for that to happen.
Uh, and I'm happy from what I read of him that at least he's gone for help and gone through rehab.
Yeah, and he
Hopefully
has a
he's doing
yeah,
well
he has a
now.
relationship with my children, which is
That's
great.
wonderful. Yeah, that's the best you can hope for is that he
That's right.
gotten some help and is loving to your children. Um, yeah, this idea that a predator could lead a double life, being so charming, let's say when they're on TV or if he's doing an interview with the Wall Street Journal, and then come home and turn into uh, someone else, is that, private and public persona. It's really fascinating. I mean, books and movies, countless books and movies on
Yeah.
the topic. Um, and for you, I mean, you and I both know what it's like to have public pain, where the public can see our pain. Um,
Yeah.
how do you describe the difference between private pain that you can confide in your best friend or your mother, versus the public pain when you talk to reporters or people are filming a movie about your pain? Uh,
Yeah.
how do you
That's
feel
an
or how
interesting
do you see it when
question.
you go public?
I mean, I that's a really interesting question. I mean, I've been in therapy for so long, so I had processed everything that had happened to me. I processed when the book was written. I processed when the movie was coming out. So for me, that's a very private process.
Hmm.
I'm not going to make my pain vulnerable to the public. That just that just doesn't work. I mean, I use the movie, I exploit the movie, the most misogynistic movie on the planet, to help women everywhere. And that I feel comfortable doing. And my pain has become my purpose. But my pain and the vestiges of that are really for my therapist and I.
Right. But I feel like you were subjected to your private conversations with your husband in your own home in privacy. Those conversations were written down by your ex-husband and then put into a movie that everyone saw.
Yes,
I
yeah.
think it even won Academy Awards. It was such a well-written and interesting,
Yeah,
dynamic film. It was funny. It was exciting. It was terrible,
amazing.
terrible ups and downs, and what a story. But for you, I just feel like those were your private conversations with him. You were not expecting them to end up in a screenplay.
Oh, no, 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 no. When I left him, I was, I think 30, 31, and then I moved to Los Angeles with my children so we could start over again. And then I met my current husband, who I'm with now for 25 years. And I was like, okay, that's behind me. That's done. But no, Jordan is the gift that keeps on giving. Book, then he made it into a movie.
And
And
another book. I think he has two or three books,
yeah, I think he has two. Yeah. And so
Wall Street and then Catching the Wolf of Wall Street. Although
that
we're going to focus on promoting your book first.
Yeah, so I could have never imagined that all this could happen, but it did. And I just, now I get to help women all over the world because of it. So it kind of all worked out.
I think it's actually a blessing that you were such an integral character in a huge Leonardo DiCaprio film because it allows millions of women to look up to you and to know who you are. Because that's the first step is, when
Yes,
people know your story, that's how
yes,
we know we can trust you with our story because we know you've been through something similar and
that's right.
traumatic.
I have street cred. I have street cred aside from my PhD. Yes,
Yes, you
yes,
have a medical degree next to your name, the MD and the doctor in front of your name, but you also started a movie as you were Margot Robbie and this beautiful, innocent, because you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't deserve to be
no,
used in any way, not verbally, not physically, not financially, to lose your husband, to have to deal with the father of your children being a very loud, at times, addict or narcissist. Nope. I mean, you didn't deserve it. Um, and thousands of women I know write you thank you letters for how you have changed their lives and broken
yes.
their trauma bond. Is there anything specific that some women have written in their letters that you'd like to
Oh,
share?
yeah. I always get direct messages and all my patients, and it's so the most beautiful thing in the world. And, they'll say to me, "You saved my life." And I don't feel like that at all. I just am facilitating their process. But what happens is that when you've been abused, as you know, people don't believe you. And so I tell somebody, I believe you, I see you, I understand you, and here are the tools to help you get out and to heal. And I just helped a woman leave after 33 years. And she was not able to leave. We started to work together in January. She's out. She got a temporary restraining order. She got the guns out of the house. She's in the house and she's doing well. And so that's the work that I do.
Well, that does change lives. And what exactly, for our viewers, what exactly is a trauma bond?
Yeah, it's a toxic dysfunctional relationship between two emotionally attached people. And what makes it different is that the pathological partner wants power and control over their lover, right? Over their wife, over their husband, if it's a woman. And so it has to have a power imbalance, as we mentioned, and it has to have intermittent reinforcement. Those are the two conditions for it to be a trauma bond.
Hmm. What do you do if someone doesn't want to admit that she's being abused, even if you want to give your book to her, but you don't want to upset her or make her feel you're overstepping your bounds? How can one
Yeah,
approach that to help a friend who's currently being abused?
yeah. So, here's the thing. It takes time to really accept that you're being abused. And so I honor every woman's process with that. It's not for me to say to them, you're being abused and you have to recognize that, they do that in their own time through education and validation. And then once they do recognize it, they have to have radical acceptance that this is happening. And once they have that radical acceptance, then they can plan their escape.
So you mean the woman really needs to have that self-awareness?
Really, internally, no, like
Just
I'm being
can't
abused.
help.
It's not my fault, but it is my responsibility to leave and save myself.
Well, don't we always think it's our fault?
Please.
I mean, I always thought it was my fault, and I was just trying to
Yeah,
get a lawyer-client consultation and being
yeah,
abused,
yeah. Well,
job and being abused, but I felt like it was my
yeah,
fault.
women always think that it's their fault, and the abuser also tells us it's our fault.
Yes. I was told it was my fault for being so easy to take advantage of because I'm so trusting and I just
Terrible.
seem so easy to take advantage of. Oh, thanks. It's
Terrible.
probably my fault then. And even people who are on my side said to me, "Well, maybe were you wearing a skirt business suit or a pantsuit?"
Imagine what a stupid question.
Because if I'm wearing a pantsuit, I'm not going to be abused. But if I'm wearing a dress or a skirt suit,
Right.
then I deserve to be abused.
Exactly. That's ridiculous.
Or what color was your business suit?
Right.
You know, don't wear a red business suit, then you're asking for it. Or if you're at home, and you're wearing a red dress, does that mean you're trying to make your husband angry? No.
It's not.
Um, what are some of the horror stories you've heard about the custody battles, your own or that of others?
I did not have a bad custody battle because I was very lucky. My ex got arrested, so it was so clear he was a criminal and I was not, and so he might have fought me for custody if that had not happened, but that did happen, and so he had his own issues with the government that he was really focused on,
Right.
and I would never. Like I said, as long as he was safe, I would never keep my children from their father. So, but I mean, the custody cases our terrible family court is a circus and it does not do a great job at protecting women and children from abusers. It believes that even if a man is abusive, just because he has 50% DNA, the child has 50% of their DNA in him, that he has a right to be a father. And that's not correct, right? Because we know that not only do these men have trauma bonds with their wives, they have trauma bonds with their children. They're usually, coercively controlling and abusive to their children. And so it probably comes in a different shape and form, but the court does not recognize that often. And the courts are not prepared to deal with people with cluster B personality disorders. They're set up to deal with regular divorces. But usually the ones that end up in court are the ones with the person with the cluster B personality disorder. And I've seen women lose their children because the pathological partner usually, often, if they're really sick, like wants to fracture the attachment between the mother and the child. And so it's just a whole cesspool of a mess.
And I find that I've heard abusers say as an excuse, oh, I was beaten as a child, meaning then they have an excuse to beat their girlfriend or the,
We don't buy that. There are plenty of hurt people who don't hurt people.
right? Plenty of people were abused as children but got help
My
or,
mother was abused as a child, and she was a great mother.
you know,
So
that gives
that's just because,
hope to all children. Because if a child has terrible parents or one terrible parent, or maybe terrible,
yeah,
the right word, a troubled parent, let's say,
yeah, traumatized parent, yeah, unhealthy parent, right?
child is traumatized, the child can still work through that with, would you
My
therapy,
mom is,
love?
yeah, she had an alcoholic father who used to beat them and a schizophrenic mother, and she was an amazing mother. So you can do it.
She made a point to not be like,
The opposite, yes.
yes, my mother had some of that too. And she became the best mother ever because she wanted to show love to her children because she didn't feel loved.
Exactly. And
I,
many people do that.
she did, yeah, she did the opposite. Instead of copying the bad behavior, she learned what is the good behavior. Do
That's
I have
right.
a grandparent or a different role model to follow other than my parent? And there's always a way to find a good role model, right? Uh, did you have a role model growing up, or have
Oh,
you
my
done
mother was,
your
yeah,
mother?
my mother was my role model. Yeah.
It's
Yeah, she was
beautiful.
amazing. She was amazing. She really instilled in me that education is the best thing in life, and she was right. Hence why I got my PhD. And so, yeah, I was very lucky. She divorced my dad when I was 6, and she was a very strong role model for me.
When it's a case of abuse happening in an office, what they call a hostile work environment, have you counseled many patients like that? And what are some
I don't,
examples? Some
I
examples of
don't.
what might qualify as an abuser in it?
Yeah, I don't really. Usually it's women and their partners, but it's really the same dynamic where there's an abuse of power, usually depends upon the resources of the abuser for a job, right? And then they have intermittent reinforcement. They can really, say, "Oh my God, you did an amazing job," and then like throw a book at your head, right?
Yes.
And so it's the same dynamics. It just, if again, when you're financially dependent on that job, especially if we think about in this economy where jobs are just so hard to get,
Mm.
it'd be really hard to manage that.
Yes. Um, and as a wife, often the man is the breadwinner. So the woman, she's home with children, even if she has a doctorate like you do, or a law degree and a high paying job, she may still choose not to work or be told not to work because she's raising the children,
That's right.
nurturing them, or she's pregnant and giving birth and she's missing time from work. And then she is more and more financially dependent on the man, almost as if he is her boss. In some marriages,
Correct.
there's that dynamic where the man is the boss. He tells you your allowance or the household allowance to buy food for the family or to,
That's right.
buy things for the house, household supplies. The man, in many cases, still, that traditional gender role model. The man makes the bacon, the money, and the woman
Yes,
is actually cooking bacon or food for the family and the children. So it is
that's right.
they call in an office dispute, they call it, is it the direct subordinate? Is it a direct employee or staff member and the boss? Versus if you work at a different department or a different company, although that can also be a power dynamic if you rely on that other company or that other department head.
Right.
Their
That's
opinion, their letter of recommendation may be held
right.
over your head. If you have sex with me, I won't write terrible things in your letter of recommendation. And then, and obviously in a marriage, there's always the threat of divorce or being cut off or having the children,
So
I'll
separation.
tell your children terrible things about you if you don't do this.
Correct, correct. Really, in all of those scenarios that you mentioned, it's right? It's the abuse of power and threatening the dependent person.
Yes. And I don't know how much experience you have with the political world, but as we all know, even just from reading the newspaper, sometimes power corrupts in politics, and we'll have, leaders who run the show, and they're either in a city or a country or a state, and those leaders really have a ledge from which to abuse the people under them if they choose to. Uh,
Yeah.
why is it that certain jobs like politics or Wall Street and finance or celebrities, let's say, I don't want to use names, but certain famous celebrities have been abusive to their wives or girlfriends, allegedly. But is it that these public spotlight roles really attract that kind of personality that might be power
Well,
hungry or
yeah, if you think about it, the predatory pathological person, they want power and control. So they're going to be drawn to jobs where there's power, where there's a power dynamic. It's that simple. Judges, lawyers, wherever there's a power dynamic, surgeons, a lot of them are drawn to jobs where they have power. And again, not everybody abuses power. We're not saying that. It's just people, there are certain people with certain personality configurations that do.
right, right. I mean, I always think there's hope. I think most men are good-hearted, caring,
Oh,
and
yes.
who want a healthy relationship. And if they offended a woman they care about, or even a woman at work who they either care about or they work with her and get to know her and in one way or another care
Of
about her. I mean, I think most men would be ashamed if they had made a woman feel
course.
small or feel insecure because of something they said, or they accidentally lost their temper and yelled at her or took it out on her. I think most men would apologize sincerely and try not to do it again. But then there are the people, some of the people you and I have met who might have a pattern of the behavior that is toxic for any relationship, work relationship, home relationship.
It's a pattern of behavior. That's very well said. Yeah, it's a pattern. It's not just a one-off, right? It happens. Yes.
Um,
Over and over again.
why don't you hold up your book for our viewers? And
Yeah,
we'd love to hear what you'd like to say about what's most
yeah,
meaningful for you.
yeah. So I wrote Run Like Hell. It got published in January 2024. And the reason why I wrote it is because I saw all these smart, bright, beautiful women ending up in trauma bonds in my office. So I went back to the research, and the book is written in three different sections. The beginning section is all about what a trauma bond is, who the pathological partner is, and who the victim is. The middle section is about the symptoms we get, why women leave, and how to leave safely. And then the third section is all about how to heal, because we know we can heal, which is great. And that's the most important part.
Yes, the hope. And congratulations to you, because not only did you get your doctorate, did you become an author, you also have a husband who is a healthy partner for you because of the work you've done on yourself and recognizing what are healthy qualities in a partner. Uh,
Yeah.
what are some of the qualities that are easy for women like us to spot where we can sort of feel a little bit safer with a new partner?
Yeah. So, the first thing is like, does the person's words and actions match? Do they respect your boundaries? And can they hear you? When my husband and I had our first argument, which of course occurs, and I said something, he goes, "Oh, yeah, I get that." And I was like, wow, what? So, can they hear you? Can they respect your boundaries? Do their words match their actions? And then take it from there if those are three yeses.
That's beautiful. I was told once that the most attractive thing a man can do is exactly what he said he was going to do.
Isn't that the truth?
When you know
That
a man is
is the
reliable.
truth.
Yeah, and I guess part of it is that we need to always work on ourselves. Maybe we're always a work in progress, but certainly right after an abuse, when the abuse is really fresh, is when you try to get women and victims into counseling and to read your book. And
Correct.
start that healing process as soon as
Yeah,
possible while it's raw, rather than to suffer for 20 years and then find your book.
that's right. That's right.
So the sooner the better, for anyone out there who feels, uh, who has experienced abuse. Hold your book up again, Dr. Nadine, and
Yeah,
tell us
come, go
where
get it.
we can buy it on Amazon.
Buy it on Amazon. You can go, so you can find me on my website, drnae.com. You can find me on Instagram, The Real Dr. Nadine. Send me a direct message. I post every single day. And it's just been so lovely talking with you and really expounding on this topic that really needs, we need to illuminate it for women everywhere.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for what you've done for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I love your posts on social media. I click like on them every time I read them, and they always make me think or make me smile, and they make me feel like I'm less alone. So thank
Oh,
you for
that's
all
what
you
they're
do
meant to
for
do.
women.
Thank